Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic today, Tim. I always love these episodes where we bring a guest back on to talk about developments in whatever case, whatever story they are passionate about. And this one in particular, the passion comes from the twin sister of a gentleman who was found dead, and she is relentless, and I can't wait for people to hear what has developed in her pursuit for justice. But Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for asking. And yeah, I'm excited to host Dornett Mullings again on The Missing Show. We did have a two-parter with her. I believe it was late last year in 2023. And on Monday of this week, we released a condensed version of that interview. So you might want to check that one out before you hear this one. And yeah, as you said, Dornett is continuing her fight for postal worker and her twin brother, Calvin Berry. And if you want to find out any more information, you can go to justiceforcalvin.com, and that 4 is the number 4. And Dornett also has social media pages, so you want to search for Justice for Calvin.
All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Dornett Mullings.
Welcome back to the podcast. Dornett Mullings, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
It's so good to have you back. You joined us a couple of times in the past. You have what is one of the most tragic and frustrating stories that has ever come to us, and we're so happy to have you joining us again. But before we get into some of the developments on this story of yours, can you give the listeners a little overview, a little broad stroke version of who you are and why you're here?
Sure. I am the twin sister of my brother. My twin brother is Calvin Berry. He resided in a town about 2 hours north of Miami in Florida called Port St. Lucie, Florida. He was a mail carrier. He was the glue to our family. He was the one that everybody turned to for everything that we needed to know or to do within our family. And all of a sudden, it came so out of the blue that his wife called me on March 10th at 3 a.m. to tell me that he was missing. Totally out of character for my brother. He was a deacon in his church. He was a mail carrier with the USPS Postal Service, delivering mail daily. So I said to her, "What do you mean he's missing? Did he not come home from work yet?" And she called me at 3 a.m. And she said, "Yeah, he came home from work, but he took sleeping pills and she thinks he was sleepwalking." This was totally shocking to me because we are from Jamaica. We don't get involved in taking any kind of aid other than, some kind of herb, some kind of leaf from a tree or something. That's what we grew up on. That's what we knew to be our aid in any ailment or illnesses. We use, it's for minor remedies. This is what we used. So it was shocking to me. But I must tell you, her call was strange. It was not an anxious person trying to find someone. And I thought to myself, well, she doesn't seem so anxious, so maybe I shouldn't be. And then when she told me that they were waiting for the police. She had already called the police and they were waiting for canine and drone. I thought, well, this is very serious. Then I said to her, I asked her actually, "Did you look outside?" And the reason why I did ask her that question is because he's an avid farmer. He loves to farm. He loves to tend to fruit trees in his backyard. And he had lots of tropical fruit trees. So if anything, I said, "Did you look in the backyard? Maybe he's sitting under the tree or something." She said, no, she did not look back there. She shone a flashlight through the glass door and she saw nothing. And that struck me as odd. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. She called me to report him missing. She never called me to say, "Have you heard from him? Did he call you?" Why is she telling me that he's missing but never asked me if maybe he was with me? So, we took 2 days of searching for him. And to make a long story short, his body showed up on day 3 behind their residence, directly behind their residence in the middle of the canal. And I want to make one correction from part 2, because I had told you that the canal was, I think, 30 or 40 feet wide. It's actually 60 feet wide. And his body was in the middle of the canal. So his body was found 30 feet into the canal, 30 feet wide. But the police department, Port St. Lucie Police Department, closed it as an accidental drowning with no evidence, no water in his lungs to substantiate an accidental drowning, no evidence of any indication that he was in that area of the canal. But for me is, how would your body reach in the middle of the canal, 30 feet across, if you fall on the banks of the canal, if you slip and fall, and the current is going north to south? So are you saying to me that the current abruptly changed, move his body into the middle, and then change again and going downstream? It makes no sense.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is the statement of no water in his lungs. Is that something that you know based off of an autopsy report or any testing that was officially done and sort of signed off on?
The medical examiner's report said that there was small amounts of water in one cavity, something like that. But his body was discovered floating on his back. So a seeping of water into the cavity, small amount, is not indicative of drowning.
That must be so frustrating to hear.
It's very frustrating to work with this police department. And I must tell you, we actually deposed the detective, Kristen Meyer. And the reason why we were deposing her is because the police department, one of the investigator, and it's a lot happened from then to where we are now. But I met with the chief of police and I said, Chief, there are certain things that are, after they closed the case, I met with him and I said, there are certain things that really is not adding up. There are inconsistencies with their stories and we need to find out what happened. There are key areas that you really need to look into, key things. And he said he would. So he assigned it to another investigator. And this investigator, Sergeant Robert Fontaine, after they closed the second investigation, I obtained the report. And his report had a lot of discrepancies, unbelievable discrepancies. I could not believe that this was supposed to be a trained investigator. It was so totally off. So I decided to obtain the public records. And I received the public records and I literally obtained the video recording of the second investigation that they did with my brother's wife, where Sergeant Fontaine gave her unsolicited legal advice to sue me so that I can stop asking questions, to shut me up. He gave her advice to sue me. So she did. And I was happy for the lawsuit because, most important, there she could clear herself. She could now show that she had nothing to do with this. And I would be the happiest person to find out that, oh no, my brother's wife was not involved in it. There are too many inconsistencies. So I was happy to finally see that we have some legal way of getting answers. This was her opportunity to let us know that, hey, I did nothing wrong. I'm not involved. There's nothing nefarious on my part. Maybe someone else did something. But what she did, she pled the fifth. In her own lawsuit against me, she turned around and pled the fifth. Now, why would someone do that? Isn't that shady?
Well, that sounds strange. So this is her civil lawsuit against you, and she pled the fifth in court when she was questioned, or?
In our interrogatories.
Okay, so you're back and forth.
And in our deposition as well.
Okay, and you were expecting discovery to lead to more clues that you could work with.
Correct. So those actions solidifies my belief that there is absolutely more to discover. There is more than what she is saying, I believe that they know more. Both her and her daughters know more and are, creating all these lies. There are so many lies that they have told to the investigators.
I want to revisit this pleading the fifth thing. I don't know how this works in the deposition structure, I guess. Did she plead the fifth, like overall, like a blanket? I plead the fifth on all questions, or just certain questions?
Well, she pled the fifth on all questions in the interrogatory, but she pled on some questions in the discovery, in the deposition, sorry.
And they let you know which questions she pled the fifth on?
Yes.
What, can you give us an example of one of, like, the line of questioning?
Most of it was the toxicology results in my brother's case showed high levels of Benadryl in his system. And the Benadryl is alarming because her 911 call, her first call to 911, she introduced the Benadryl in the call and said he takes Benadryl. And there we go. The toxicologist found high levels of Benadryl in his system. So we are asking about this Benadryl, and she pled the fifth.
Right. Okay. So, So in the call, she mentioned that he does take Benadryl because he has issues sleeping, but she doesn't know how much he took.
But she said she did not know if he took it that night.
Okay. Right. And it turns out did he have lethal doses of Benadryl? High levels?
It's hard to say if it's lethal dose. It's certainly extremely high. And one of the things I did in my investigation, because, I have nonstop trying to figure out what happened to my brother. He did not deserve this. And I want to know what happened to my brother. And if it was the opposite way and he had the ability, he would be doing the same thing for me. I called the maker of Benadryl, Johnson & Johnson. I spoke to their poison hotline. I sent them the toxicology report. And you know what they said to me? Someone with this level of Benadryl, the only thing they can do is crash on their couch. They had no ability to even walk outside. They would crash on their couch. Now, when she called, she said the side door to the garage was open. And I'm thinking, just in my opinion and just my common sense, okay, if she said the side door to the garage was opened, and she thinks that he walked through the side door, the house is completely fenced. And we know that he never went through the back fence because it was locked from the inside and you cannot lock it from the outside. You cannot go out and then lock it from the outside. So he did not go through there. If he had gone through the side door, as she said, he would have gone through the fence in the gate at the front of the house, then make a turn to the left, make a U-turn, walk through the neighbor's yard towards the canal. If we were to take this theory that the police said it was an accidental drowning and the medical examiner said, if we were to go with that theory, why wouldn't his family, his immediate family, say, wait a minute? If that's the case, he would have trespassed on the neighbor's yard going to the back towards the canal. So should we check to see if the neighbor saw him trespassing and did something to him? No, they're not interested. They're not interested. In addition, she never looked for him. She called 911, but yet she said she does not like outside. She's afraid of the bugs, so she never went outside to look for him.
I have so many questions. I'm gonna fire two questions at you, probably quick answers. I don't recall if you ever said during your description of the canal how deep it was. That's the first question. And also, do the neighbors, the yard that he walked, or the yard that he allegedly or supposedly walked through, the possibility that he did that, do they have any security cameras? And did the police ever follow up with that family to see if they had any footage?
Okay. The canal, I had a survey done of the canal. The deepest section of the canal, which is in the middle, is less than 5 feet. That's the deepest section. And the canal has like graduating levels, so like steps going down. If he had fallen accidentally, he could have slept there and get up the next day and just walk out. How did he get into the middle of the canal then? With the current going north to south.
And if he fell into the water, having been in a state where he was about to pass out, then his cause of death would have been drowning, right? There would have been water in his lungs.
Correct. Regarding the surveillance camera, the reality is, and this is again in our deposition of the detective, it's obvious. She went there from the beginning with a mindset of doing nothing, doing absolutely nothing. Detective Kristen Meyer did not want to put any resources into finding out what happened to this black man. They provide more resources in Port St. Lucie for a missing dog than they did for my brother. They could have called in a diver. They could have called Fish and Wildlife. They could have called the Coast Guard. They did nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I recall in the early days, before I even got the police report, I had no idea that this detective was so incompetent. But I walked with some friends we walked the neighborhood. We spoke to a neighbor who said she knew something was off because she saw the activities at my brother's house. And when she inquired, one daughter told her that he had dementia. And she thought that was odd. He's a mail carrier. She never saw anything like that about him. But then the other daughter told her he was sleepwalking. And she said from then she knew something was off because they could not get their story straight. But she said to me, Port St. Lucie Police Department will do nothing. I said, are you crazy? That's not true. She said, my husband works at the sheriff's office, St. Lucie Sheriff's Office, and Port St. Lucie Police Department will do nothing. I'm telling you right now, they will do nothing. And I said, I'm going to prove you wrong. This time they will do something. I am going to prove you wrong. And she was right. She was right all along. And I remember when this case was assigned to Detective Kristen Meyer, at that time, I hired a private investigator from the area, so he knows all the detectives there. He said to me, you're getting the best. The person that is assigned to this case, Detective Kristen Meyer, is the best they have. I felt really comfortable. I felt really good. I had no idea. She was the absolute worst. Do nothing. That was her. Do absolutely nothing. And in her deposition, she said, I am obsessed. How could I be obsessed wanting to know what happened to my brother? She's confused obsessed with persistence. I want to know what happened to my brother. I want answers. And they absolutely are not going to do anything to give me the answer.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
When you had said that you were going to prove them wrong and show that this police department would actually do something, this is the first time you've ever had to pursue something like this, I imagine. What was your plan moving into it? And then what were some of the red flags that popped up where you thought that this was falling apart? And how did you sort of restructure that plan moving ahead?
I just thought there were just so many glaring evidence and so many, just occurrences that she would look into. That, of course, this would bring attention to a police department who wants to investigate if there's a crime or not. And first of all, I would imagine that if something like this occur, you would start with homicide, rule out homicide, and make your way down until you come to maybe the accident or undetermined. But she came with a mindset that I am going to do absolutely nothing and just close this case. I will put no resources in this and I'm just going to close this case. That was her mindset. One of the biggest, there are more than one, but one of the things that really drew my attention was the two adult daughters. Both lives within 10 minutes of their parents. Both were unaccounted for hours. The police went to knock on one's door, and I would assume that the wife is the one that the mother that told them to go check on why she's not answering, because she said she's calling both daughters and she's getting no answer. The police went, and when police go to someone's house, they're not lightly touching the door. They're banging on the door. And they were there for 7 minutes, banging on this daughter's door, 10 minutes away, only 10 minutes away. No answer. She has a 7-year-old child in the house. No answer. Then she showed up and said, "Oh, I was home sleeping." 6 hours later, the other daughter, who also lived 10 minutes away, just in an opposite direction, no answer. Her mother said she's calling her. No answer. No answer. 6 hours later, she has a 1-year-old child at the time, and she was home sleeping and never heard a call. We found out that she has a husband. She's had a husband for 4 years that my brother knew nothing of. We knew nothing of. Did the wife call the husband? No. So where were they? We still don't know. Where were they for up to 6 hours in an emergency? And I'm saying, if she said my brother was missing at 12:30, she called 911 at 1:30. That's within 1 hour. She called 911, but she never looked outside. Why is your daughter 3 hours one and 6 hours the other daughter missing, and she never called for emergency for them? Wouldn't you believe that they might be in danger too? Or maybe their father is at their house? It makes no sense. There was there was a ransom on day 2 of him being missing.
Was that a prank?
We don't know. The ransom came in to both my nephew, which is not for his wife. It's a previous relationship, that child, and one of the daughters on day 2 at 1:30 in the afternoon. The police department was notified. About 6 o'clock, they're taking the report. They were at the house taking the report. The ransom said that the kidnapper, wanted $7,000 for his safe return. I said, sure, let's pay it. I will pay it immediately. And the detective, it was a different detective, not the one in charge of the case. She said, we have to investigate it a little more before we get into paying any money. So at 9:30, which is now 8 hours after this ransom came in, she brought the 3 children, the son and the 2 daughters, into the police station to do some kind of negotiation. And they did start communicating with this ransom person and was getting some feedback. And we could see that the 2 daughters, there's a video of both of them on their phone. At one point, when the investigator told my nephew to call the ransom number, the one daughter pointed to my nephew and said, can he try to call her, and pointed to her sister as her. She was on her phone the entire time throughout this investigation. So this detective or this investigator did not even recognize that, hey, you are communicating with and negotiating with this ransom person, and here is this person sitting in front of you on her phone texting nonstop. Could she be the one responding? We don't know. But this investigator was so blind. Another do-nothing person in that police department. But the ransom came in on a text now number, which would indicate that there was a text now app being used. Their action, especially that their father was still missing at that time, something is just not adding up here.
Now, that is something that we've heard, that there are scams that target families of missing people, and something we've looked into in the past and spoken about. Usually the missing person has been missing for more than a day, though, when that happens. But the scam/ransom attempt is not totally unusual for missing persons cases, because they have a phone number and it's someone looking for a small amount of money, and there's, not great ways to track that.
The detective said that they were able to trace it to a number coming out of Dubai. And because the U.S. has no treaty with Dubai and they can't extradite someone from Dubai, So she never followed up. To me, this is where you call in the FBI, because now it's international. This is where you as a local police department do not have the resources, call in the FBI. But they never did.
And did you ever suggest that they do this, or did anyone suggest that they do this?
Well, I have gone to the FBI. I've said so many things to the FBI. I don't remember everything. But now that I have spoken to some ex-FBI who told me that the FBI definitely would have gotten involved in something like this once international is involved, I will follow up on it.
Interesting. And where is your relationship at with Calvin's family, his daughters and wife now after the lawsuit and everything?
Well, it's strange that, and I'm going to say something before I give you that answer. In the deposition of the detective, which it was not favorable to her. She was not winning. It showed how biased, incompetent she was. So it was not favorable to her. When it was the opposition turn to cross, she said to him, which is the plaintiff that sued me, attorney, she said to him that I, Dornett, sent her an email that said, I do not like his wife, I do not like the two daughters, and I have never liked them for years. This is what the detective said. And she said that it was an email I sent her. Imagine how shocked I was to hear that. This detective was in her uniform. She was wearing a badge. She had her lawyer there. She took an oath to tell the truth. I was shocked. I literally interjected and said, that is a lie. She started to search for this email. She could not find it. It doesn't exist. So my attorney said to her, do you know that Mrs. Mullings hired her sister-in-law to work in her company? I did. Way before people were working virtually, I hired her to work in my company. She was sitting at home and I'm paying her a weekly salary just to help, to help because I knew they had a sick child, a disabled child. And so she could stay home with that child and I'm paying her a salary. When my attorney said to her, did you know that I hired her? She goes, no, I didn't. And then she said, well, maybe it wasn't for years. Maybe she did not say she didn't like them for years. Okay, show us the email. She then referred to an email. I think it was a March 25th email. So my attorney pulled up the email. She said, this email said, and this is reading exactly what is on the email. I do not want to accuse them wrongfully, so please look into my concerns. This is what the email said. So when my attorney read it to her, I said, where in this email do you see she's saying that she doesn't like them? Then she said, oh, well, it must be a different email. So she started looking for the email. She never found it. And all of a sudden she goes, put up her hand and go, oh, well, it must be in my head from an interview I did with her. I'm like, what? She never interviewed me. She has never interviewed me. But it just shows how biased she is.
What do you do with this information? Because it's not like you're presenting it on this show without any backup. I mean, you sent us a ton of documents before this interview. You sent us tape of interviews with law enforcement. And this isn't something that you're just kind of connecting your own dots. I mean, this exists in documentation. So what do you do with all this at this point?
It's so much. We're going through it. We're still vigorously defending the lawsuit. We'll continue to do that. At some stage, we will, come up with how do we solve that part of the issue. Right now, we're focusing. We want to know what happened to Calvin. We want to know if they did something or whomever. I do not want to accuse them wrongfully, but I can tell you, in our lawsuit and our discovery and all the information from the police department investigation and all the lies, it only solidifies my belief there's something there. So we will continue. We will continue legally what we can do. And it's, thankfully she sued me.
Right. And to reiterate the reason why you're thankful for the lawsuit, frustratingly, though, she pled the fifth, but you're thankful for the lawsuit because not only does it mean that you have an opportunity to speak out, but she's almost put in a position where she has to reveal some information as well. So yeah, so it's a move that you would have done on some level anyway just to get the information, but very frustrating that she's pleading the fifth.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, I know like in a court of law, that's not something that you can hang your hat on, but pleading the fifth is like kind of adjacent to saying, my answer is going to put me in some sort of legal jeopardy.
Correct. And it's unusual as far as in my research, it's unusual for a plaintiff in a civil suit to plead the fifth.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. Now, where is the case now with the Port St. Lucia police? Is it technically an open case right now?
I know that they had reopened it for the fourth time, and the assistant chief of police said he reiterated that he is convinced that my brother was put in the water after death, and they are doing their investigation. I have no idea. They're not, they don't give me any updates, so I don't know where they are now. I have no idea. But we continue with our civil suit, with our, and our discovery.
And is there anything that the public can help you out with?
I actually would like to bring attention to the Port St. Lucie Police Department. And there's another case that they have also botched, which I will send you the information on that case. They need help. If you cannot do justice to a case, please do not put families through such agony. You are the police. I don't know and I'll send you the internal affairs investigation, or maybe I have already sent it to you, of the second investigator that when the case was reopened the second time. And I filed an internal affairs complaint because just about every paragraph in his report, and I'm talking about maybe 30 pages, were discrepancies. There were so many discrepancies, it made no sense. They were false information. And I believe the chief relied on that false information and closed it the second time. So I filed a complaint. The police department needs some kind of accountability.
Is this going to be something that you continue on as far as like a crusade? Have you found any other stories, any other cases that have similar?
Yes, I found similar case, and I am relentless. I am unwavering. I will not stop. I want to know what happened to my brother in Port St. Lucie. It's very likely that I will not know what happened to my brother in Port St. Lucie by the Port St. Lucie Police Department or any other agency in Port St. Lucie, because I can see already they are biased, they're incompetent, they don't care. Or they're either unable or unwilling to do anything to find out what happened. But I will. I will find out. I will not stop until I find out what happened to my brother.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about that? The other case, Elise Steed.
I'll send you the or you might have the report from the television station.
Yeah, you sent it. The I-Team investigation. I'm just curious, what I suppose pattern you're trying to display here.
As far as the police department, it seemed to me that it's discrimination. It's discrimination either by race or mental, because Elise apparently had a drug problem. So they're discriminating against her, so they will not put any resources to find out what happened to her.
Have you spoken with the family, Elise's family?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and their autopsy concluded that Elise died of an accidental overdose, but the Steed family doesn't agree with that. That's
something you should look into that case as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be more than happy to speak with anybody.
Yes.
That you've referenced our way.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's another botched investigation. And, one of the things, especially in speaking out and doing something on your platform, is to open people's eyes. I want people to know how far removed this was from me. I was led to believe, okay, I was not even involved in defund the police because I said, they're good cops, they're bad cops, they're humans. But I have learned the hard way how your life can change without you have any involvement in this change, but it totally changes your life and put you in a totally different direction. It affected me so much. To lose my brother in such a way with family that just seems like they don't care. They don't want to know. They don't care. But then to go up against a police department, it's not me. It's not in me. I never knew that I could even fathom taking on something like this. This is not something I want to do with my life. But how can I sit back? And it could happen to you. It could happen to anybody because you're living your life, obeying the law, following, all the rules. You don't break the law. But here it is. Your family, your sister, your brother, your loved one, all of a sudden, through no fault of your own, you have to now take on this fight.
You said a few minutes ago that you're relentless while pursuing the justice for your brother, and you're more than welcome to come back on with any updates, of course. And you have ranked yourself among the top people that come on the show to talk about this, who very accurately describe what it's like for somebody to have a certain lifestyle before this happens and now a lifestyle after this happens, and how you're not expecting it and how it changes you. So I think those words are pretty powerful. People who are listening who have had something like this happen or similar need to know you can still exist and you can still fight and you can still have both lives, right? But you have to sort of embrace your natural instincts, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I think you were saying you didn't know you weren't supposed to be doing something like this, but all of a sudden you found it in yourself. So it's commendable.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really disturbing. It's also frightening. And I do not want to believe that persons that were so close to me, I watch these things on TV, but I'm living the reality now. It's hurtful. It's very painful. It's very disturbing. And I still, unfortunately, I have other things to do with my life that I have to try to do and that I have put aside. I have my own family, but I'm taking this on full 100%. I'm going to make sure full time